Welcome to the Jameson Files. I'm your host, Carrie Weber, and I'm super excited to have another Jameson team member with me today, McKenzie Webb. And McKenzie has a very interesting position at Jameson. She really runs the whole spectrum of Jameson services. Not only does she support Jameson marketing and their production services, but she's also a Jameson advisor for our Grow Coach services. So McKenzie, you really are kind of doing it all. Now you're a guest on the Jameson Files. So.
I know. Bear with me. I'm usually behind the camera on these things.
Yeah. So if any of you follow me on social media, you see lots of selfies where it's me sitting here and McKenzie in the back. And so I'm glad to have you in front of the camera today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So another interesting piece of the puzzle that McKenzie brings to the table is your experience in working in dental practices. And the one I'm most interested in talking about is your experience in working in a general practice that incorporated very successfully orthodontics. And you are quite involved with the American Orthodontic Society. Mm-hmm. And so you even spoke at their annual meeting recently.
Yes.
And so what I want to talk about with you is something that we at Jameson have always been very passionate about. Whether you are adding a new service, like ortho, mm-hmm. or a new piece of technology, or whatever it may be that's brand new for the practice, something that we believe very fervently in is that we need to prepare more than simply doing the skill, more than simply doing the clinical work or working the piece of technology. There's so much more to successfully implementing something new in your practice. And that can dip into many of the systems in a practice. So from your perspective mm-hmm. of being a part of a practice like that, as well as your work with Jameson and with AOS, I thought you'd be the perfect person to give perhaps some insights, whether you're a practice that is interested in bringing ortho into your practice or implementing anything new, quite frankly, into your treatment mix or into your practice services. What are some best practices or successful tips that you have experienced in your work in this front?
So some of the successful best practices is making sure that not only the clinical team is getting proper training, but also the business team. So the business team, that goes everywhere from how to answer the phone calls with the correct verbal skills, talking about orthodontics, and discussing the appointment process with the patients. They also need to understand as the business team how to talk about the recommended treatment that the doctor is discussing with patients. So not only those important verbal skills with the patient conversations, but also how to present treatment plans as well. Ortho is very, very different than general practice. And you have to keep in mind, this also goes into coding too. Mm-hmm. Ortho is just a whole different ballgame. Mm-hmm. And it is very easy to implement it in your general practice. It really is. But it's just making sure that you're trained. Mm-hmm. So making sure that you understand the coding aspect of it. You have to fill out the ADA coding form a little bit differently when you're submitting to insurance. It's really just making sure that everyone is trained in the best systems and verbal skills and case presentation and financial arrangements when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think it's such a great point. And you really loaded up right there because what you said was with anything, the vision of what are we doing, why are we doing it, where are we going with this, having that kind of conversation with the whole team to, number one, make sure they understand that this is something that's important to the practice now or to the doctor, and that this is something we're going to move forward with. And then how are we going to start to apply that so that they don't feel locked in or insecure in not knowing what to do with this new thing. This is, we're talking about it from the situation of orthodontics, but this is something that practices experience all the time as dentistry evolves. Think about it with implementing CAD/CAM technology, implementing any kind of clinical technology. If you don't want it to be just sitting in the corner collecting dust, why does that happen? Because nobody knows how to not only use it, but how to talk about it, how to sell it, how to finance it, how to schedule for it. And so that, your points are perfect and on point for when it comes to your team helping you realize these goals of doing more ortho in your practice. It is so much more than going and taking the clinical coursework, which is also very important. And so that you know how to do it, that your clinical team knows how to support you in it. So it's not simply the doctor going to take coursework. Wouldn't you agree that if the assistants also need to have that kind of support?
Yes, it is absolutely so important for the assistants to have the support and the training to be able to, not only know how to assist the doctor in the services that he's providing, but it's that they're able to do it efficiently, especially with ortho. Typically the assistant does most of those monthly routine ortho checks. And you could have a really slow assistant in there, and that's really going to slow down your day. So making sure that they're trained and it's, that the schedule runs seamlessly with that.
Yes. So there's a lot of pieces to it, not to overwhelm everyone. It's simply, just like with anything else, put a plan together, put a playbook together, so to speak, of not only how do we execute this clinical service and do it well, and let's practice that together and let's train on that together, but for every element of getting from who's a good candidate, how do we introduce this as an option? How do we talk about it? What are the frequently asked questions that we need to make sure that we're comfortable with answering and working through with the patient? How do we, as you said, make financial arrangements for this kind of treatment? How do we schedule for this kind of treatment? If you've never scheduled for it before and we don't give enough time, we're going to start to run behind. If we give too much time, it's causing a problem in the opposite direction. So all of these things that we need to talk through, how do we timeline this kind of treatment, and making sure that we're staying on pace and staying on time, and making sure that this is a profitable entity for your practice. And let's not forget, Miss Marketing Production Person, how do we promote this service?
Right.
How do we market for this? That's another piece that we haven't even tapped into yet, of you have all this brand new service that you've invested all this training in, and yet your website reflects zero of that being a service that is possible for your patients.
Right. And it's a new service. You want to make it known in the community. You want to, make sure there's visuals in the office. You want to make sure that the team members are actually talking about it too. I know I've been in different types of offices, a different medical office, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that you do Botox here,
Yes.
It's because they didn't talk about it. I had no idea. But I saw it on a social media post that they posted because I followed their page. So again, it's just making sure everyone is aware, bring it up in a natural conversation so it doesn't seem forced. But again, that takes practice.
But it also takes not only practice, but it takes a shared alignment of the vision of the practice.
Correct.
So two versions of the practice, the vision of the practice, and then the practicing of the skill sets to talk about, answer questions, and promote new services in the practice. So not to overuse the word practice, but there's a lot of ways that we could use it for this particular topic. And I think that is so important to say, because this is not simply for doctors wanting to do more ortho and singing it from the top of their lungs. This happens all the time when practices don't talk about their services to their patients, and you don't have door opener conversations with them about what their goals are for their mouth, their teeth, and their smile. If they get it in their minds that they want a type of service, if they don't know, if there's no way that they would know that you provide that, they will go find it elsewhere. We hear the stories all the time. So if it's a goal for you in your practice, you better be talking about it and promoting it. So marketing is such an important combination of both what you're doing externally,
right,
talking about it to the community, but also, to your point, what we're doing internally to promoting these new services to your patients of record in your practice. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
So how do we get started on doing more of the new services or the new procedures that you want to provide? I think McKenzie really wrapped it up well. Get clear on the vision, make sure the team understands where you're going with this and why and how you're going to get there. Do the training necessary, both for your clinical team and your business team, so that you create very clear and comfortable processes that we're all competent and confident in to execute this type of care well. So McKenzie, so many great things that we talked about that had nothing to do with the clinical treatment itself. Number one, making sure that your team is really clear on your vision of where you're going, what you're wanting to start to implement, and why. And not only that, but how we're going to get there, which leads us into the next point that you made, was making sure we're putting together systems and processes, both in the clinical side and in training our business team, to make sure we're setting everybody up to be successful in seeing this become a reality in your practice. And in addition to that, making sure that we're marketing this new service not only to the community externally, but to our patient family internally. So these are all things that had nothing to do with the treatment, which we also need to make sure that we're confident and competent in. But you can see that it really truly does take a team to see a new service, skill, clinical element, piece of technology implemented successfully into your practice. So the great news is if you're looking to expand services in your practice, onboard a new team member, help refine your team's skills, whatever the case may be, McKenzie is an advisor for our Grow Coach online virtual coaching program. That's a combination of one-on-one virtual coaching with her, as well as membership to our online learning platform, Grow. So if that's of interest to you, reach out to us so that we can help make sure you're successful in your vision for your practice for the future. In the meantime, thank you for being with me.
Thank you for having me.
Love the conversation. And thanks to all of you in the Jameson Files community for joining us once again. Be well, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Jameson Files. Visit us online at jmsn.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, or Spotify. See you next time.